Jake Morrison sat in his chair at the big round table where the Galactic Council met every week. The room was white and clean with tall windows that showed the stars outside. He had been coming here for 5 years as the human ambassador. Around him sat beings from 40 different worlds. Some looked like giant bugs, others like walking trees, and a few looked almost human but with strange colors or extra arms. Today the Vorthak delegate was speaking again. The Vorthak looked like large gray lizards that walked on 2 legs. They always talked about how they were better than everyone else. The one speaking now kept saying that human ideas were stupid and would not work. He waved his clawed hand at Jake every time he mentioned humans. Jake listened but did not speak. 3 months ago he would have stood up and explained why the human plan was good. He would have shown them the numbers and the science behind it. But now he just sat quietly and took notes on his small computer. The message from Earth had been clear: no more fighting, no more trying to convince them. Just watch and wait. The Zentari delegate nodded along with everything the Vorthak said. The Zentari looked like tall, thin people covered in blue fur. They loved rules and papers and making everything take a long time. They had spent 6 months studying a human proposal to fix the food problems on 3 worlds. Their conclusion was that it needed more study. Lisa Rodriguez got the message while her ship was flying between 2 star systems. She was the captain of the New Horizon, a human exploration ship. The message came through the secret military channel that only human captains could read. She read it twice to make sure she understood. All human ships were to start heading home. Not all at once, but slowly over the next few months. They should make up reasons like crew changes or supply runs. Lisa looked out at the stars and thought about the last 5 years. Her ship had found 12 new worlds that could support life. They had saved 3 different species from disasters. They had helped set up trade routes that made everyone richer. And now they were just going to leave. Her first officer, Ben Clark, came to the bridge. He was a good man who had served with Lisa for 8 years. She handed him the message without saying anything, then read it and looked up at her with surprise in his eyes. "Captain, are we really doing this?" Ben asked. "Orders are orders," Lisa said. "Set course for the Kepler station. Tell the crew we need to pick up some new equipment." Peter Chang was packing up his medical supplies when the local governor came to see him. The governor was from a species that looked like walking bears with 6 arms. His world had been fighting a war for 10 years. The human medical teams had saved thousands of lives. "Dr. Chang, you cannot leave now," the governor said. "The wounded need you. The new plague is spreading in the southern cities." Peter had treated the plague before. It was not hard to cure if you had the right medicine and knew what to do. But the local doctors did not have the right training. They had always just called the humans when things got bad. "I am sorry," Peter sighed. "Earth needs our medical teams for a big emergency. We have to go help our own people." It was not completely a lie. Earth did need them, just not for an emergency. The real reason was in the secret message he had gotten that morning. All human medical teams were to come home. They should make up good reasons, but they had to leave within 60 days. Sam Baker stood on top of the big power station he had built 3 years ago. It provided electricity for the whole planet below. The design was human, but the aliens who worked there thought they understood how it worked. Sam knew better. There were dozens of small systems inside that only humans knew how to fix. Without regular maintenance by someone who really understood the technology, the whole thing would break down in less than a year. His team was loading their tools onto the transport ship. The local engineers watched nervously. They had learned to do basic repairs, but nothing major. Sam had tried to teach them everything, but they never seemed to get the important parts. "Mr. Baker, when will you be back?" asked the chief local engineer. "Hard to say," Sam replied. "Maybe in a year or 2. He did not tell them he would never be back. None of the humans would be back. The message from Earth had been sent to every human engineer, doctor, soldier, and scientist in council space. Come home, bring your knowledge with you. Leave nothing behind that they can use without you. Jake Morrison finished his notes and closed his computer. The council meeting was ending for the day. Tomorrow they would meet again and argue about the same things. But tomorrow Jake would not be there. His replacement would arrive tonight. A young diplomat who had orders to be polite but not helpful. As Jake walked out of the council chambers, he passed the memorial wall. It showed the names of every species that had joined the Galactic Council over the past 1,000 years. Humans were near the bottom of the list. They had only been members for 30 years. Jake wondered if the council would miss them when they were gone. Probably not at first. The Vorthak would be happy. The Zentari would file some papers and forget about it. But in a few months, when the power stations started breaking down and the food ships stopped running on time, they might start to wonder where all the humans had gone. He walked to his ship and sent a message to Earth. Phase 1 complete. We are coming home. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison left the council chambers for the last time. His replacement was a young woman named Carol Davis who smiled a lot and said very little. When council members asked her questions about missing human trade ships, she would pull out thick folders of papers and talk about regulations and procedures until everyone got bored and changed the subject. The Vorthak delegate was getting angry more often now. Trade routes that had worked perfectly for decades were suddenly having problems. Ships were arriving late or not at all. Cargo holds that should have been full of food and medicine were half empty. When he demanded answers, Carol Davis would just smile and say she would look into it. Lisa Rodriguez was leading a convoy of 20 human ships through the outer rim of council space. They moved from system to system, picking up human workers from mining stations and research outposts. At each stop, Lisa told the local authorities that the humans were being rotated back to Earth for training and new assignments. The aliens who worked alongside the humans were starting to notice something was wrong. The humans had always been the ones who figured out solutions when problems came up. They were the ones who fixed the complicated machines and made the systems run better. Now, when something broke, it stayed broken longer. On Mining Station 7, the alien supervisor watched the last human engineer pack his tools. When will the replacement team arrive? He asked. Soon, said the engineer, maybe next month. But there would be no replacement team. The mining station's main processor was built with human technology. Without someone who understood the quantum field generators that powered it, the whole operation would shut down within weeks. Peter Shang was gone now, but the effects of his absence were spreading across 3 star systems. The Kepler colony plague was getting worse. What had started as a small outbreak in one city was now affecting millions of people. The local doctors tried using the treatments that Peter had taught them, but they did not understand why the medicine worked or how to change it when the plague virus changed. Dr. Nancy White had taken over the main hospital after Peter left. She was not human. She was from a species that looked like tall, thin people with purple skin. She had worked with human doctors for 15 years and thought she knew their methods well. But when she tried to create new medicine for the plague, nothing worked right. We need to call the Human Medical Corps, she told her assistant. I tried, the assistant replied. They say all their teams are busy with emergencies in human space. They cannot send anyone. Dr. White stared at the medical reports on her desk. The plague was spreading faster than they could treat it. In 2 weeks, it would reach the capital city where 50 million people lived. Sam Baker was finishing his last job. The orbital platforms around Thexus Prime were massive structures that provided power and communication for the entire system. Each platform was the size of a small city and held together by human engineering principles that the local technicians did not fully understand. Sam's team had spent 5 years building these platforms. They had trained hundreds of local workers to do basic maintenance and repairs. But the really important systems, the ones that kept the whole structure stable, required knowledge that could only be learned through years of human engineering education. The stress readings are getting higher, said Tomas. The local chief engineer. Sam looked at the numbers on the screen. The platforms were starting to bend under forces they were designed to handle easily. But something was wrong with the stabilization system. You need to adjust the field generators, he said. How do we do that? Tomas asked. Sam realized that he had never taught them this procedure because it was so complicated. It required understanding quantum field theory and advanced mathematics that most aliens never learned. "I will send you the instructions from Earth," he said, but he knew he would not send any instructions. The message from Earth had been clear about that too. No more help. No more free knowledge. The economic problems started showing up in small ways at first. Currency exchange rates that had been stable for years suddenly started jumping around wildly. The Galactic Trade Network's computers were having trouble calculating shipping costs and tax rates. Banks were making mistakes on loan payments. What the aliens did not know was that human mathematicians had been quietly managing the economic algorithms for decades. They had written the programs that balanced trade between 40 different worlds with 40 different types of money. Without their constant adjustments and updates, the whole system was starting to break down. Maria Santos sat in her office on Earth reading reports from across human space. She was the president of Earth and had made the hard decision to call all humans home. The reports were not surprising, but they were still disturbing to read. Food production was falling on 12 agricultural worlds. Communication networks were failing in 6 star systems. 3 mining operations had shut down completely. 2 wars that had been quiet for months were starting up again. Her Secretary of Defense, General Frank Carter, came into the office with more reports. "The aliens are starting to ask more questions," he said. "Some of them are getting suspicious." "Let them be suspicious," Maria replied. "We tried to work with them for 30 years. They treated us like junior partners and ignored our ideas. Now they can try managing their civilization without us." Amy Foster was one of the last human military officers to leave Council space. She had been training alien soldiers for 8 years, teaching them tactics and strategy that had helped them win battles against enemies that had beaten them for decades. Now she was packing up the last of the human equipment and preparing to head home. The alien general she worked with was clearly worried. His species looked like large cats that walked upright. He had won several important battles using human tactics, and he knew his success depended on human knowledge. "Colonel Foster, you cannot leave now," he said. "The enemy is planning a big attack. We need your help to stop them." Amy had seen the intelligence reports. The enemy was indeed planning something big. Without human tactical support, the aliens would probably lose badly. Thousands of soldiers would die. But her orders were clear. "I am sorry, General," she said. "Earth needs all military personnel for defense of human colonies. You will have to handle this without us." The general's cat-like face showed confusion and fear. "But how do we fight without human tactics?" Amy did not answer because she did not know. The aliens had been fighting wars for thousands of years before humans came along, but they had fought them badly. Human military science had changed everything for them. Now they would have to learn to fight their own battles again. Carol Davis was having another meeting with the council leaders. They were asking more direct questions now, and her folder of papers was not working as well to distract them. The Vorthek delegate was particularly angry about trade problems. "Where are all the human ships?" he demanded. "Where are the human engineers and doctors?" "They are busy with important human business," Carol replied with her usual smile. "What? Business could be more important than their duties to the council?" asked the Zentari delegate. Carol's smile got a little tighter. "Human business," she repeated. The truth was that there were no more human duties to the council. Earth had quietly ended all cooperation agreements. The humans were not coming back. But Carol was not allowed to tell them that yet. First, the council had to learn what life was like without human help. The learning was about to get much harder. The Galactic Council's main communication network crashed on a Tuesday morning. Council leader Vorthek was in the middle of an important call with military commanders when all the screens went black. The quantum relay stations that connected 40 star systems had stopped working within minutes of each other. What Vorthek did not know was that human engineers had designed the mathematical formulas that made quantum communication possible across such long distances. The aliens had built the relay stations using human blueprints. But they had never understood the complex calculations that kept the signals stable. Without regular updates to the quantum field equations, the whole network was doomed to fail. The local technicians tried everything they could think of. They reset the computers, replaced broken parts, and even built new relay stations. Nothing worked. The signals kept breaking up or disappearing completely. Messages that should have taken seconds to travel between systems were now taking days or weeks to arrive by slower methods. Frank Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endeavour. He was an admiral now, in charge of all human military forces in this part of space. His ships were leaving their last peacekeeping mission in the Aldorian system. For 5 years, human forces had kept the peace between 12 different species that hated each other. The aliens had been grateful for human help at first. Human soldiers were fair and honest. They did not take sides in local politics. They just stopped the fighting and helped everyone find peaceful solutions. But the Galactic Council had started treating human peacekeepers like servants instead of partners. "Admiral, we are getting distress calls from 6 different systems," reported his communications officer. Frank looked at the tactical display. Red warning lights were flashing across half the galaxy. Wars that had been quiet for years were starting again. Without human peacekeepers to mediate disputes, old enemies were going back to fighting each other. "Send our standard reply," Frank ordered. "All human forces are being recalled for homeland defense. We regret that we cannot provide assistance at this time." It was a polite way of saying that the aliens were on their own now. Amy Foster was pulling her last advisors out of the Aldorian front lines. The Aldorians looked like giant walking bears with thick brown fur. They had been fighting the Nexorian Empire for over 100 years. The Nexorians were snake-like creatures that moved on dozens of small legs and had been winning the war until humans showed up. Human military advisors had taught the Aldorians new ways of fighting. Instead of just charging straight at the enemy, they learned to use strategy and tactics. They learned to coordinate attacks between air and ground forces. Most importantly, they learned how to supply their armies with food, ammunition, and medical care. General Rex was the Aldorian military commander. He had won 12 major battles using human tactics. Now he watched in dismay as the human advisors packed up their equipment. "Colonel Foster, you cannot leave us now," General Rex said. "The Nexorians are preparing their biggest offensive in 20 years. We need human guidance to stop them." Amy had seen the intelligence reports. The Nexorians had been gathering their forces for months. Without human tactical support, the Aldorians would probably be overrun within weeks. But Earth's orders were absolute. "I am sorry, General," Amy said. "You have good officers and brave soldiers. You will have to trust in your own abilities now." General Rex looked confused and frightened. "But we do not know how to fight without human advisors. You taught us everything we know?" That was the problem, Amy thought. The humans had taught them tactics and strategy, but they had never really learned to think for themselves. They had become dependent on human leadership instead of developing their own military traditions. Helen Murphy was destroying her research files on the transport ship, taking her back to Earth. She had been the Council's leading expert on alien diseases and had spent 15 years developing treatments for dozens of different medical problems. Her computer files contained cures for plagues that could kill millions of people, but Earth's orders were clear. No scientific knowledge was to be left behind. The aliens had never appreciated how much human research had helped them. They had taken the cures and treatments for granted, assuming that they could always call human doctors when problems arose. Dr. Murphy's assistant was a young woman from a species that looked like tall, thin people with green skin. She had worked with Helen for 3 years and was a good scientist in her own right. "Dr. Murphy, what about the research on the Kepler plague?" the assistant asked. "People are dying while we try to figure out the cure. That research belongs to Earth now," Helen replied sadly. "I'm sorry, but I cannot share it anymore." The assistant looked shocked. "But people will die without that information." Helen nodded. "Yes, they probably will. But that is not my choice to make anymore. The economic collapse was spreading faster than anyone had expected. The Galactic Trade Network's computers were making bigger and bigger mistakes. Currency values were changing wildly from day to day. Banks were charging the wrong interest rates. Trade ships were arriving at ports where no one could afford to buy their cargo. On the financial world of Nexus Prime, panic was setting in. Tony Blake had been the human representative to the Trade Council for 6 years. He had quietly managed most of the complex calculations that kept the galactic economy running smoothly. His replacement was supposed to be an alien economist who had studied human methods, but studying human methods and understanding them were two different things. The alien economist, Dr. Zix, had watched Tony work but had never grasped the deeper principles behind human economic theory. When Dr. Zix tried to input the same numbers Tony had used, the results were wildly wrong. The trade balance calculations are not working, Dr. Zix told the Council of Banks. I am using the same formulas the human used, but the numbers do not make sense. What Dr. Zix did not understand was that Tony had been making hundreds of small adjustments based on economic theories that most aliens had never learned. Human understanding of market behavior and currency flow was far more advanced than alien economics. Without that knowledge, the whole system was falling apart. Back on Earth, President Maria Santos was reading the daily intelligence reports. The news from Council Space was getting worse every day. Communication failures, military defeats, economic collapse, and spreading plagues were affecting billions of people across dozens of worlds. Her chief of staff, David Brown, brought her the latest diplomatic messages. The alien ambassadors are requesting emergency meetings, he said. They want to know when our people will be coming back. Maria looked out the window at the peaceful Earth sky. Human colonies in their own space were thriving. New technologies were being developed without having to explain everything to skeptical aliens. Human culture was flourishing without interference from council bureaucracy. Tell them our people are not coming back, Maria said. They wanted to manage their civilization without human input. Now they can see how well that works. Carol Davis received an encrypted message from Earth while she was sitting in the council chambers. The message was short. Phase 2 complete. Begin Phase 3 immediately. Phase 3 meant telling the council the truth. No more polite excuses. No more diplomatic language. Just the simple fact that humanity was withdrawing permanently from galactic civilization. Carol stood up during the middle of a heated debate about trade problems. Council Leader Vorthek, I have an important announcement from Earth. The chamber fell silent. Everyone was hoping that the humans were finally going to help solve the growing crisis. The government of Earth wishes to inform this council that all cooperation agreements between humanity and the Galactic Council are hereby terminated, Carol said in a clear, calm voice. All human personnel have been recalled to human space. No replacements will be sent. No further assistance will be provided. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately. The silence that followed was complete. For a moment, no one seemed to understand what they had just heard. Then, Council Leader Vorthek started screaming. Council Leader Vorthek stopped screaming when he realized that Carol Davis was no longer in the chamber. She had delivered her message and walked out while he was still shouting. Now he sat in his chair looking at the empty space where the human ambassador had been sitting for 30 years. Emergency reports were flooding in from across council space. The communication breakdown was getting worse every day. Military commanders could not talk to their troops. Trade ships were lost because they could not contact traffic control. Families were separated across star systems with no way to reach each other. The agricultural worlds were facing the worst crisis. The atmospheric processors that controlled weather and air quality were failing one by one. These massive machines had been built using human engineering principles that no one else fully understood. Local technicians could do basic repairs, but when major systems broke down, they had no idea how to fix them. Planet Kepler 5 was the first to lose its atmospheric control completely. The air became poisonous within days as the chemical balance shifted. 6 million people had to be evacuated to other worlds, but the communication breakdown made organizing rescue operations almost impossible. Danny Rogers was commanding the human border patrol ship Frontier when the first refugee ships appeared. They were old cargo vessels packed with alien families who had lost their homes when the life support systems failed. The aliens had nowhere else to go except human space. "Captain, we have 30 ships requesting permission to enter human territory," reported his communications officer. Danny looked at the tactical display. The refugee ships were overcrowded and running low on fuel. Many of them had children aboard. But his orders from Earth were clear about immigration policy. "Send the standard message," Danny said. "Human space is closed to unauthorized immigration. Refugee applications must be submitted through proper diplomatic channels." "Sir, they say they will die if we turn them away," the officer replied. Danny felt bad about it, but orders were orders. "That is unfortunate, but not our responsibility anymore." What Danny did not tell the refugees was that there were no diplomatic channels anymore. Earth had closed all its embassies in council space. The only aliens being allowed into human territory were those who had actively supported humanity during the council years. That was a very small number. Kelly Johnson was watching satellite feeds from her office at Earth's Agricultural Development Center. The images showed failing crop yields across former council space. Entire planets that had been green and fertile were turning brown as the hybrid plants died without proper care. The problem was genetic locks that human scientists had built into the food crops decades ago. The new plants produced much more food than natural varieties, but they needed special nutrients and treatments that only humans knew how to make. Without access to these compounds, the enhanced crops were dying and reverting to wild varieties that produced very little food. "How long before widespread famine?" asked her assistant. Kelly looked at the projection models on her computer screen. 6 months for the first deaths. Mass starvation within a year. "Should we send emergency food supplies?" Kelly shook her head. President Santos was very clear: no aid of any kind. They wanted independence from human assistance. Now they have it. Paul Davis was overseeing construction of New Terra, humanity's newest colony world. The planet had been a barren rock 6 months ago, but human terraforming technology was transforming it into a garden paradise. Automated machines were creating breathable atmosphere while robot farmers planted earth crops in specially prepared soil. The work was going much faster now that humans did not have to share their technology with the Council. For 30 years, every major human innovation had been studied and copied by alien scientists. The humans had been required to explain their methods and share their research as part of Council cooperation agreements. Now human science was advancing rapidly without any outside interference. New discoveries were being made every day. Better computers, more efficient power sources, improved medical treatments, and advanced weapons were all being developed in secret human laboratories. "The atmospheric conversion is ahead of schedule," reported his chief engineer. "We should have a breathable atmosphere in 3 months instead of 6, Paul smiled. "Good. How many more worlds are ready for terraforming?" 17, sir. All in secure human space where the Council cannot interfere. The Vorthak Empire was facing revolution. Their industrial base had collapsed when the human-designed manufacturing system stopped working properly. Military production had slowed to almost nothing. Their powerful war fleet was grounded because the targeting computers no longer functioned correctly. General Krath was the Vorthak military commander who had spoken against humans in council meetings for years. He had always claimed that Vorthak technology was superior to human science. Now he was learning how wrong he had been. "Sir, the orbital defense platforms are offline," reported his aide. "The technicians cannot restart the weapon systems." General Krath stared at the tactical display showing his planet's defenses. Red warning lights indicated failed systems across the entire network. The weapons platforms had been built using Vorthak engineering, but the computer programs that controlled them had been written by human programmers as part of a technology sharing agreement. "Contact the human embassy," General Krath ordered. "Sir, there is no human embassy anymore," They closed it last week. For the first time in his life, General Krath felt real fear. His empire's enemies were already preparing to attack. Without working defenses, his homeworld would be conquered within days. The delegation of alien ambassadors arrived at Earth's orbital stations 3 weeks after Carol Davis had delivered her announcement. They came from 12 different species and carried documents promising anything humans wanted in exchange for renewed cooperation. President Maria Santos agreed to meet with them, but not on Earth. The meeting would take place on Luna Station, and the aliens would have to accept whatever terms humanity offered. There would be no negotiation. Ambassador Zeth of the Zentari led the delegation. His blue fur was turning gray from stress, and his normally perfect diplomatic composure was cracking. The Zentari had always prided themselves on their bureaucratic efficiency, but their government was collapsing without human administrative support. President Santos, we are prepared to offer humanity full membership in the council leadership, Ambassador Zeth said. Equal status with the founding species. Complete autonomy in human space. Favorable trade agreements. Maria Santos listened politely, but her expression remained cold. Ambassador, you seem to be confused about the situation. Humanity is not interested in rejoining the council under any circumstances. But our civilizations need each other, Ambassador, Zeth protested. The council cannot function without human expertise. The council functioned for thousands of years before humans arrived, Maria replied. I am sure you will figure out how to manage without us again. The truth was that the council had never functioned very well before humans arrived. Wars had been constant, trade was inefficient, and technological progress was slow. Human participation had transformed galactic civilization, making it more peaceful and prosperous than ever before. But the aliens had never appreciated that contribution. Jennifer Adams was now Admiral of the Terran Colonial Fleet. Her ships patrolled the borders of human space, making sure that no alien military forces came too close to human worlds. She had been a junior officer when humanity first joined the Council. Now she commanded the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. Admiral, we are detecting Vorthic battle groups moving toward the frontier sector, reported her intelligence officer, Jennifer. Looked at the tactical display. The Vorthak fleet was impressive by alien standards, but human military technology had advanced far beyond anything the Council possessed. The humans had been sharing outdated weapon designs with the Council while keeping their best innovations. Secret, are they heading for human space? Jennifer asked. No, ma'am. They appear to be retreating from their border worlds. Our intelligence suggests they are facing rebellions on multiple planets. Jennifer was not surprised. The Vorthak had ruled their empire through military strength, but that strength had depended on human-designed weapons and tactics. Without human support, they were discovering that many of their subject worlds no longer feared them. The final straw came when Nexus Prime Space Station lost life support. The massive structure had been the symbol of galactic unity for centuries. Representatives from every council species had offices there. The best restaurants, hotels, and entertainment venues in the galaxy were located on its many levels. But the environmental systems that kept 40 different species alive in one habitat had been designed and maintained by human engineers. When the last human technicians left, they took with them the knowledge needed to keep the complex systems running. The station was evacuated in panic. As the air became toxic and gravity generators failed, billions of credits worth of equipment and artwork were abandoned. The council government had to relocate to temporary facilities on various member worlds. Council leader Vorthok sat in his emergency command center and finally admitted what everyone already knew. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal began, the Galactic Council ceased to exist in any meaningful way. 14 member worlds had declared independence when their local governments could no longer maintain basic services. The economy had contracted by 60% as trade routes collapsed and currency systems failed. Several minor conflicts had escalated into full-scale wars without human peacekeepers to prevent them. Danny Rogers was patrolling the border between human space and what used to be council territory when his sensors detected massive refugee movements. Entire populations were fleeing their homeworlds as infrastructure collapsed and wars spread. Some were heading for human space, but most were just running with no clear destination. "Captain, we have over 200 refugee ships on long-range sensors," reported his tactical officer. "They appear to be from the Kepler system." Danny knew what had happened to Kepler. The plague that Dr. Peter Chang had been treating before his recall had spread unchecked across 5 planets. Local doctors had tried using human medical techniques, but without understanding the underlying science, their treatments had failed. Millions of people were dying. Among the refuge ships were some that Danny recognized from his intelligence briefings. They belonged to alien scientists and engineers who had worked closely with humans during the Council years. These were the beings who understood human value and had supported cooperation instead of exploitation. "Signal the ships containing Dr. Zen, Professor Kala, and Engineer Zix," Danny ordered. "They are approved for immigration to human space. The rest will have to find somewhere else to go." It was harsh, but Earth's policy was clear. Only aliens who had actively supported humanity would be allowed into human territory. Everyone else was on their own. Kelly Johnson stood in the observation deck of the orbital agricultural station watching cargo ships load food supplies. The ships were heading for human colonies in the outer rim, carrying enough food to feed millions of people for years. Meanwhile, the former Council worlds were facing widespread famine. Her assistant brought her the latest reports from alien space. Food production is down 80% across former Council territory. The hybrid crops have failed completely without human-developed nutrients. Natural crop varieties cannot produce enough food for current populations. Kelly had designed many of those hybrid crops during her years with the Council. They had been created to solve galactic hunger and had worked perfectly as long as human agricultural scientists provided the necessary support chemicals and genetic modifications, but the aliens had never learned to produce these materials themselves. "Any requests for emergency food aid?" Kelly asked. "Dozens of them. Some planets are offering to trade rare minerals, advanced technology, even territorial concessions for food shipments." Kelly shook her head. Standard response: "Refer all requests to the Department of External Affairs. We are not in the humanitarian aid business anymore." Paul Davis was inspecting the latest batch of human colony worlds. In 6 months, humanity had established 17 new settlements, using advanced terraforming technology that made planets habitable in weeks instead of decades. Each world was more advanced than anything in the former Council space. The colonies were protected by defensive systems that made them virtually invulnerable to attack. Human military technology had advanced rapidly once it was no longer shared with potential enemies. Energy shields, quantum torpedoes, and automated defense platforms created overlapping fields of protection around every human world. "Sir, we have detected alien scout ships observing the frontier colonies," reported his security chief. "They maintain distance but appear to be studying our defensive arrangements." Pohl was not concerned. "Let them look." Even if the aliens learned everything about human defenses, they lacked the industrial capacity to build similar systems. Their manufacturing capabilities had collapsed along with everything else. "Any of them getting too close?" Paul asked. "No, sir. They seem to understand that approaching human space uninvited would be unwise." The Vorthic Empire had completely fallen apart. General Krath was hiding in an underground bunker while rebel forces controlled most of his home planet. The military that had once dominated a dozen star systems was scattered and demoralized. Their weapons did not work, their ships could not navigate properly, and their communication systems were unreliable. The rebellion had started when subject worlds realized that Vorthic military strength was an illusion without human support. Planets that had been conquered decades ago suddenly declared independence. The Vorthak fleet that tried to stop them found that their targeting computers no longer functioned and their weapons frequently misfired. "Sir, the rebels have captured the orbital shipyards," reported one of Krath's few remaining loyal officers. "Our fleet is trapped in port." General Krath stared at the tactical display showing red symbols where green ones used to be. His empire was dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The human military advisors he had dismissed as inferior had been the only thing keeping his forces effective. "Send a message to Earth," he ordered desperately. "Offer them anything they want in exchange for military assistance." "Sir, Earth is not accepting diplomatic communications from former council members." For the first time in his long military career, General Krath felt completely helpless. The empire he had served his entire life was crumbling, and the people he had treated as inferiors were the only ones who could save it, the Aldorian-Nixorian. War had resumed with devastating consequences for both sides. Without human tactical guidance, both armies had reverted to the crude strategies they had used before human contact. Mass frontal assaults replaced careful planning, supply lines collapsed. Medical support disappeared. General Rex of the Aldorian forces sat in his command bunker watching his army disintegrate. The Nexorians had launched their offensive exactly as human intelligence had predicted, but without human advisors to coordinate the defense, the Aldorian response had been chaotic and ineffective. "Sir, the Third Army has been completely destroyed," reported his aide. "The Fifth Army is retreating in disorder. We have lost contact with the Seventh Army." General Rex had won dozens of battles using human tactics, but he had never truly understood the principles behind those tactics. He had followed human advice without learning to think strategically for himself. Now, facing the greatest crisis of his military career, he was helpless. "Contact the human embassy," he ordered. "Sir, there is no human embassy anymore." "General." Rex closed his eyes. His species had fought the Nixorians for over a century before humans arrived. They had been losing badly until human military advisors taught them new ways of fighting. Now they were losing again, and this time there would be no rescue. The economic collapse was spreading beyond former council space. Species that had never been council members were affected as trade networks failed and currency systems crashed. The galactic economy had been more interconnected than anyone realized, with human expertise forming the foundation that supported everything else. Banking systems across dozens of worlds were failing as the mathematical models that managed interstellar finance broke down. Human economists had developed the algorithms that balanced trade between different species with different economic systems. Without those algorithms, confusion and chaos replaced order and prosperity. On the financial world of Nexus 2, panic had set in completely. The planetary government was printing money so fast that prices changed hourly. Citizens were rioting as their savings became worthless. The sophisticated economic theories that had created galactic prosperity were revealed to be dependent on human mathematical insight that no one else possessed. President Maria Santos received hourly reports on the collapse of galactic civilization. From her office on Earth, the news was uniformly bad. Famine, war, economic chaos, and technological breakdown were spreading across former council space like a plague. Her Secretary of State, Robert Clark, brought her the latest diplomatic messages. "We have received formal surrender documents from 6 different species," he said. "They are offering complete submission to human authority in exchange for any assistance we are willing to provide." Maria looked through the documents. Some offered territorial concessions. Others promised to serve human interests exclusively. A few were willing to accept human colonial government of their homeworlds. What is our response? Robert asked. Maria set the documents aside. "The same as always. We will consider establishing limited trade relationships with individual worlds on a case-by-case basis, but only after they demonstrate genuine reform of their attitudes toward humanity." The truth was that humanity no longer needed anything the former council could offer. Human colonies were thriving. Human technology was advancing rapidly. Human culture was flourishing without alien interference. The galaxy had taught humans that they were better off on their own. Jennifer Adams received intelligence reports about alien military movements from across the galaxy. Most showed retreating forces, collapsing command structures, and abandoning of advanced positions. A few showed desperate attempts to attack human space that had been easily repelled by automated defense systems. "Admiral, the Zentari are requesting a military alliance," reported her intelligence chief. President Maria Santos stood in the conference room of Luna Station looking out at Earth through the transparent aluminum windows. The alien delegation sat around the curved table, their various forms hunched in postures of defeat and desperation. They had come bearing documents of unconditional surrender and desperate pleas for humanity's return to galactic civilization. The leader of the delegation was Ambassador Zeth of the Zentari, the same being who had filed endless paperwork to delay human proposals for years. His blue fur was now mostly gray, and his once proud bearing had collapsed into exhaustion. Beside him sat representatives from 12 other species, each looking more desperate than the last. "President Santos," Ambassador Zeth began, "we acknowledge that mistakes were made in our treatment of humanity. We are prepared to offer complete autonomy for human space, equal representation in council leadership, and favorable trade agreements." Maria listened without expression. Behind her stood Admiral Jennifer Adams, whose Terran colonial fleet now controlled 17 star systems and growing. The military balance of power had shifted completely. Human ships patrolled the galaxy's most valuable trade routes while alien fleets struggled with broken navigation systems and malfunctioning weapons. "Ambassador," Maria said calmly, "you seem to misunderstand the situation. Humanity is not interested in returning to the Council under any circumstances. We have learned that we are better off managing our own affairs." The alien representatives exchanged panicked glances. Ambassador Kren of the Aldorians leaned forward desperately. His bear-like species had lost their war against the Nexorians within months of human withdrawal. "Surely there must be some arrangement we can make. Our worlds are dying without human assistance." Maria walked to the tactical display showing the current state of galactic civilization. Red zones indicated areas of active warfare. Yellow zones showed economic collapse and infrastructure failure. Green zones marked the expanding sphere of human space, peaceful and prosperous. "The arrangement is simple," Maria said. "Humanity will consider limited trade relationships with individual worlds that demonstrate genuine reform in their attitudes toward us. But these will be bilateral agreements between Earth and specific planets, not with the Council as an institution." Dr. Martha King, Earth's new Secretary of External Affairs, stepped forward with a datapad. She had spent years watching alien bureaucrats dismiss human expertise. Now she held the power to determine which worlds would receive human aid and which would be left to struggle alone. "Our terms are non-negotiable," Dr. King said. "Any world seeking trade relationships with humanity must first acknowledge their past mistakes and demonstrate concrete changes in policy. They must also provide compensation for the infrastructure and knowledge they benefited from during the Council years." The compensation demands were staggering. Decades of human innovation had been shared freely with the Council under cooperation agreements. Now Earth was billing for every patent, every medical breakthrough, every engineering improvement that had benefited alien civilization. The total came to more than the gross domestic product of most worlds. "These terms are impossible," protested Ambassador Vex of the Nexorians. His snake-like form coiled nervously as he spoke. "No world can afford such payments." "Then you will have to do without human assistance," Maria replied coldly. "We managed to survive for thousands of years before joining your council. I'm sure you can do the same." The truth was more complex. Several alien species had already begun establishing independent relationships with Earth. The Aldorians, grateful for years of human military support, had been the first to accept human terms completely. They had formally acknowledged human superiority in military and technological matters and agreed to provide raw materials in exchange for continued protection. Admiral Jennifer Adams reviewed the military situation with growing satisfaction. Human forces had secured the most strategically valuable systems in their region of space. Advanced defensive installations made human worlds virtually invulnerable to attack. Meanwhile, the fleets that had once threatened human interests were scattered and ineffective. Admiral, we have detected 3 more alien battle groups requesting safe passage through human space, reported her chief of staff. They appear to be fleeing conflict zones in their home territories. Jennifer smiled grimly. Charge them the standard transit fee. 1,000 units of refined metals per ship, paid in advance. The transit fees were another source of revenue for expanding human civilization. As trade routes through former council space became unsafe due to piracy and warfare, shipping companies were forced to use human-controlled passages. Earth charged premium rates for the privilege of using secure hyperspace lanes. Paul Davis stood on the observation deck of New Terra's capital city watching construction crews build the latest expansion. The human colony was now home to 10 million people and growing rapidly. Advanced manufacturing facilities produced goods that were in high demand throughout the galaxy, but only allies of humanity could purchase them. Sir, we have received another request from the Kepler system, reported his economic advisor. They are offering exclusive mining rights to 3 asteroid belts in exchange for medical supplies. Paul considered the offer. The Kepler system had been one of the worst affected by human withdrawal. The plague that Dr. Peter Chang had been treating was still spreading, killing millions. But Kepler had also been one of the worlds that had supported the Council's decision to marginalize human input. Reject the offer, Paul decided. They chose to ignore human medical expertise when they had it. Now they can live with the consequences. The selective nature of human aid was sending a clear message across the galaxy. Worlds that had treated humans as equals during the Council years received generous assistance. Those that had supported human marginalization were left to solve their own problems. The lesson was not lost on other species watching the situation develop. General Frank Carter reviewed intelligence reports from his office at Terra Command. The former Council military was in complete disarray. Without human tactical doctrine and logistical support, most alien forces had reverted to the ineffective strategies they had used before human contact. Sir, the Vorthic Empire has officially collapsed, reported his intelligence chief. General Krath was killed in the fighting yesterday. Rebel forces control all major population centers. Frank was not surprised. The Vorthak had been among the most vocal critics of human military methods, claiming their own traditions were superior. Their rapid defeat by poorly organized rebels proved how hollow that superiority had been. Any other significant developments? Frank asked. The Zentari have lost control of 6 colony worlds. Their administrative systems cannot function without human organizational methods. Several worlds are reverting to pre-spaceflight governments. The collapse of galactic civilization was accelerating as each failure created new problems. Communication breakdowns led to coordination failures. Economic instability caused social unrest. Military defeats encouraged more rebellions. The spiral was becoming impossible to reverse without massive human intervention that would never come. Dr. Kelly Johnson watched the food distribution reports with professional interest but no sympathy. The famine spreading across former council. Space was entirely predictable. Human agricultural scientists had warned for years that the hybrid crops required specific nutrients and treatments. But alien bureaucrats had never bothered to learn how to produce these materials independently. Ma'am, we have received an offer from the Thexis system, reported her assistant. They are willing to provide 20% of their annual industrial output in exchange for seed crops and agricultural support. Kelly checked her files on Thexis. The system had consistently supported human research proposals and had treated human scientists with respect during the council years. Their offer was generous and would provide materials needed for human expansion. Accept the offer, Kelly decided, but limit the support to basic seed varieties. No hybrid crops and no advanced techniques. They need to develop their own agricultural science if they want to survive long-term. The meeting on Luna Station concluded with most of the alien delegation leaving empty-handed. Only 3 species had been offered limited trade agreements, and these came with strict conditions and high costs. The rest were told to return when they were prepared to offer genuine concessions rather than empty promises. Ambassador Zeth was among those leaving without an agreement. As his ship prepared to depart for Zentari space, he sent one final message. To President Santos, you are condemning billions of innocent people to suffering for the mistakes of their leaders. Maria read the message and deleted it without responding. The Zentari had spent decades treating humans as junior partners while benefiting from human expertise. Now they wanted sympathy for the consequences of their own arrogance. But humanity was done providing charity to ungrateful recipients. 5 years later, Admiral Jennifer Adams stood on the bridge of her flagship, surveying the thriving human colonies of the frontier sector. Earth had become the dominant power in their region of space through the simple demonstration of their indispensable value. Human technology led the galaxy by decades.